Guru Mukha Padmavakya Chitete Koriya Aikya Arna Koriho Mane Ash. Happy New Year, everyone here at RadhaRaman Vedic Temple. For those who don't know, my name is Nirantara Dasa. I am an initiated disciple of the ISKCON founder Acharya, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, since 1974. And I have been invited to come here and speak Krishna consciousness, Krishna Katha. Tonight, our Sunday feast is being sponsored by Meena and Piyusha, which is why I asked them to sing before the program. So let's first give them a big Hari Bol, thanking and encouraging them. And so I asked Piyush what he would like me to talk about. And I was really surprised because he picked a very elevated topic. He wants me to speak about the teachings of Bhagavan Kapil Dev to his mother Devahooti, which appears in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So before I proceed, I will invoke the sacred 12-syllable mantra. You can all repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this narration of Kapil Dev occurs in the 3rd canto. So the 1st canto opens with the discussion, questions of the sages of Naimisharanya, headed by Shaunaka Rishi, posing questions to Sutta Goswami. And in the course of narrating, Sutta Goswami inevitably starts to talk about Shukadeva Goswami. So there's already a conversation within a conversation. Because Sutta Goswami is narrating what he heard at the original Bhagavatam recitation by Shukadev to Maharaj Parikshit. So in Canto 2, Parikshit Maharaj begins to hear from Shukadeva Goswami. But then when we get to the 3rd canto, Shukadev then switches to another conversation. So already we're in our 3rd conversation, and that comprises actually 3rd canto and 4th canto. The discussion between Mahatma Vidura and the great sage and friend of Vyasadeva, Maitreya Rishi. So, for the purpose of today's topic, we go to the 3rd canto. Maitreya is speaking. He tells Vidura, Lord Brahma was empowered by Krishna, and by that, he wanted to generate living entities. And so in the beginning, he begot 10 sons for the extension of generations. These 10 sons were Marichi, Atri, Angira, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, Brigu, Vasishta, Daksha, and the 10th son, Narada Muni, Vajaya Veena, RadhaRaman Name. Narada was born from the deliberation of Brahma, which is the best part of the body. Sage Kardama, husband of the great Devahooti, was manifest from the shadow of Brahma. So now we can see these are not simply ordinary personalities. So this scene begins with Kardama Muni in a hermitage in the forest, and he's performing meditation, sacrifice, and worshiping Krishna. And the Lord is so pleased with Kardama, he personally comes. And he comes standing on the back of Garuda. Garuda has wings. And the Lord is very pleased upon seeing Kardama. And at some point, the Lord sheds a tear, and that lake becomes known as Bindu Sarovara. So, the Lord comes to give benedictions to Kardama. And Kardama says to the Lord, yes, I have a slight inclination to marry. Only a slight. But I need a compatible wife who is of like disposition. And that is significant. Parents know this, and children should learn that in choosing a life mate, must choose someone of like disposition. In other words, a devotee marries a devotee. A devotee does not marry a demon like that, because the sentiments, the mentality, it's different. So you marry someone of like disposition. So Lord Vishnu then gives a preview of Kardama's whole life. He has been meditating for thousands of years, by the way. For thousands of years. So the Lord tells him, yes, I have just the girl for you. The great Manu, the original Manu, Swayambhuva. He actually had 3 daughters. But this one was very special, Devahooti. And she is just to your, Prabhupada would say, psychophysical nature. Psycho and physical. Both have to be there. Not that the other person is drop dead gorgeous, but they're crazy. No. Both have to be there. Sound mind, good heart, and suitable. Then the Lord says, you are going to have 9 daughters. And those daughters are going to fill the universe with qualified sons. They will be married to great sages. And then the Lord says, and I myself will become your son. Wow. Can you imagine hearing that? The Lord tells you, I'm going to become your son. Whew. So, and then the Lord disappeared after, because you see this in the Bhagavatam. The Lord appears, gives the benedictions, and then goes. He doesn't, like we say, hang out. He does his business and goes. So just as the Lord said, the great emperor, the first Manu, Swayambhuva, along with his wife Shatarupa, and their birth is also very, very unique. They were born directly from the body of Lord Brahma. Directly. And Swayambhuva comes and approaches Kardama in humility. Even though he's the great Manu, he comes humbly and offers Devahuti. And he says, this girl has been thinking of you, and she will follow you. And Swayambhuva he has to leave now that he's given his daughter. Out of great affection, he's crying. He's crying because he has now given his daughter away. So Kardama says now, Devahuti is a princess. Emperor Swayambhuva is living very opulent life. But this Kardama's living in the forest in a little hut. So Kardama says, okay, you have to follow me in my severe penances. And Devahuti, very nice girl, yes. So she neglects her own body and is simply there with her husband, simply serving him. Then after some time, Kardama tells Devahuti, yes, now I want to show you what is the fruit of my austerities. And so he produces from his mind a big, floating, you could say, little city, flying mansion, like a little city. And it could fly in the sky. Now, before they get on, Kardama says, now, enter this lake right here. So she enters the lake, and there in the lake are these young damsels, and there's some kind of house. And they take her. Now, for a long time, she's neglected, so her body is blackish and her hair is all in knots, right? So the girls take her and they bathe her and give ointments and make her look once again like a princess. And then she comes before Kardama. And Kardama says, now let's go in our aerial mansion and we'll go on a honeymoon, 100 years honeymoon. And where were they going? Not to Disneyland. No. They went throughout the heavenly planets and sporting, enjoying very nicely in the mode of goodness. Nice heavenly sense gratification. You could say religious. Very, very in the topmost mode of goodness. And then, at the right time, Kardama expands himself into 9 forms and produces 9 daughters who come out fully grown. Can you imagine? You all know what it was like raising your children, putting them to school, finding her, right? Fully grown, good to go. Now, Kardama surprises Devahuti. Now also, right after this, Kapila appears as the son of Kardama and Devahuti. And therefore you'll see in the Vedas many, many times Kapila is known not as the son of Kardama, but as the son of Devahuti. So therefore you'll see many times Devahooti-putra Kapila, just to show how special she is. So Kapila appears. So then Kardama he actually asks Kapila, now that you have appeared, I would like to take sannyas. And people would think, I would think, wait a second. You have God as your son. Why do you want to take sannyas? And Prabhupada gives the answer. Because Kardama was more interested in setting the right example. That at a certain stage, the man should renounce sense gratification, householder life, and devote oneself fully to spiritual life. So Kardama wanted to show this example, because we know from Bhagavad Gita, whatever a great man does, common people follow. So Kapil Dev sanctions Kardama Muni. Yes, you should, and you just continue. It's the same thing Krishna says in the Gita. Same thing. Because Kapil Dev is Krishna. It's the same person, only a different manifestation, but the same. Bhagavan, Kapil Dev. So Kapil Dev says, you roam the earth as a sannyasi, but always remember me. That is the key to the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Always think of Krishna and never forget him. That's why we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. We are practicing always to remember Krishna and never forget him. So, Devahuti comes to know that my husband is about to take sannyas. Any of you ladies, if your husband all of a sudden said, I'm taking sannyas, I don't think, well, maybe you would. You would say, okay, good, bye. I don't know. But in the case of, I speak from experience. In this case, Devahuti she approaches Kardama and says, wait. She's very intelligent, actually. She's very intelligent. She says, yes, we've spent all this time roaming the heavenly planets, enjoying, living a very nice life. You've given me now 9 daughters, and I have this nice son, Kapil. But you forgot to give me one thing. And what is that thing? Fearlessness. She said, you did not give me that. So, it was already mentioned because Kapil Dev told Kardama what to say, actually. He predicted that Kardama said, no, I'm going to go, but your son, Kapil Dev, he will give you this fearlessness by transcendental knowledge. And this section of the teachings of Kapil Dev to his mother Devahuti begins with chapter 25 and ends with chapter 32. So that's 8 chapters. And it's the largest section of the 3rd canto. So, what's very, very interesting, what Devahuti says. Let me see if I can get, here it is. So, Kardama has left. So now Devahuti approaches her son, Kapil Dev, and look what she says. Again, this demonstrates her deep intelligence. She says, I am nirvina nitarang, very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, I have fallen into andham tama, the abyss of ignorance. Then she says, you are my only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance, which is dushparasya, difficult to cross. You are my transcendental I, which by your anugrahat, mercy only, I have attained after many, many births. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin and the Supreme Lord of all living entities. So this is why I say Kapil Dev is just another form of Krishna. Because look what she's saying. You are the Supreme Personality. You are the origin. We hear Krishna say that in Gita more than once. Now be pleased, my Lord, to dispel my illusion. For due to my feeling of false ego, I have been engaged by your Maya, and I identify myself with the body and consequent body relations. I have taken shelter of your lotus feet because everybody say, Sharanang Sharanyang. So what she's saying to Kapil, you are the only person of whom to take shelter. That's God. God is that person, the only person really who one should take shelter. Doesn't Krishna say that in Gita? Chapter 18, Mam Ekam Sharanam. And I've said many times, Sharanam can mean surrender or shelter. And I like the shelter word because it's gentler. Because if you tell somebody, you surrender, no, they're not. But if you say, no, you should take shelter, oh, much more nice way of saying. She says, you are the axe which can cut the tree of material existence. I therefore offer my obeisances unto you, for you are the greatest of all transcendentalists. And I also inquire from you as to the relationship between man and woman, as well as between spirit and matter. So this last statement of Devahuti shows us how deep and advanced her intelligence is. Because when she's asking, what is the relationship between man and woman? Basically, she's getting to the root cause of material bondage. This is explained throughout Bhagavatam. The binding force that keeps us as prisoners is this Maituni Bhav, the attraction between male and female. So in chapter 25, Kapil Dev begins to answer the questions of Devahuti. The first I've broken out into topics. So Kapil Dev begins right from the start, Bhakti Yoga. Doesn't waste any time. Gets right to the cuts to the chase. And Bhakti begins with Sadhu Sangha, association with devotees. That is the beginning. I know in my life, if I hadn't come in contact with Srila Prabhupada, where would I be now? But associating with a sadhu, that is how your bhakti begins. And there are many statements, but this particular verse gives us a nice definition of what is a sadhu. Titikshava, Karunika, Suhrida Sarva Dehinam, Ajata Shatrava Shanta, Sadava Sadhu Bhushana. Kapil Dev says, the symptoms of a sadhu is that one is titikshava, tolerant. Isn't that what Lord Chaitanya tells us? First instruction, not first, but in his Shikshastakam, he says one should be more tolerant than the tree. One should be merciful, karunika, and surida, friendly to all living entities. The sadhu is ajata shatrava, without enemies. Now, someone may see the sadhu as an enemy, but the sadhu doesn't see anybody as his enemy. This term is also used for Yudhishthir. They say he had no enemies himself, but there were many people who thought he was an enemy, namely Duryodhan. But the sadhu himself has no enemies. And the sadhu is, you all know this word, shanta, right? Everybody loves that word. Shanta, peaceful. The sadhu is sadhava. He abides by the scriptures. And the sadhu is sadhu bhushana. All of his characteristics are sublime. Then comes this very important verse. We see this verse is quoted throughout Prabhupada's purports in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also. Lord Chaitanya liked this verse. I also like this verse. Such a nice verse. Satang prasangan mama virya sangvido bhavanti hritkarna rasayana kata taj joshanad ashu apavarga vartmani sraddha ratir bhaktir anukrameshyati. This verse, you could say, is the sum and substance of the science of God. One verse. Here it is. Satang prasangan. By associating with devotees. That's why we come to the temple, to associate with devotees. Mama virya sangvido, meaning when you hear this katha, it is very virya, powerful. Depending on the purity and the advancement of the speaker who's qualified and empowered, he should be able to touch the heart of the audience. So, a real sadhu, he has this power within him to instill faith, encouragement, enthusiasm in the audience. And Hritkarna Rasayana, the talks about Krishna is very pleasing to the ear and the heart. That's if you're a devotee. If you're a not devotee, then you're looking at the cell phone and looking at your watch. You can't wait till when's the food? But if you are serious devotee and you have some kind of bhav, some devotion, then when you hear the katha, it's very pleasing and satisfying. And you should leave the lecture program with something that you got something to take home with you. So, after explaining how bhakti begins with association with devotees, Kapil Dev then speaks about how to recognize really, scientifically, the real qualities of a pure devotee. Because several years ago, I gave a class when we had the old temple. Before this, we were in the Prasad Hall, right? But then before that, we had the original temple. So some years ago, I gave a class based on this, that apart from the pure devotee, there are 81 different kinds of devotees. Why? Because if you're not a pure devotee, then your bhakti is influenced by the modes of nature. So 3 modes of nature interact 3 times 3, you get 81, right? 3 times 3 is 9 times 9. So looking at all the permutations, combinations, you can come up with 81 different kinds of what we call mixed devotees. Little bit. So this answers a question. Sometimes people say, oh, this person is supposed to be a devotee, but he does this, he does that. Well, yes, he's not a pure devotee. So there's still some ignorance, or there's still some passion, right? Like anyone who's done painting, you just have 3 colors, but you mix those 3 colors and you get all the shades, right? I was once shown that by an artist. Just 3 colors, 3 basic colors, but then you mix them, right? And you get all the different textures and tones. So the modes are like that. Every one of us, we're a mixture. Yes, we're devotees, but we're all struggling with the different modes until we get to this pure devotee stage. Then, Kapil Dev, because in between all these chapters, Devahooti is asking more questions. Just like in Gita, Arjuna asks a question, Krishna answers, and that leads to another question. Bhagavatam is the same way. Parikshit is hearing from Shukadev, then after one katha is done, he goes, now what about this? So that opens a whole nother. So, one of the things that Devahooti wanted to know is the real scientific basis of this material manifestation. Therefore, Kapil Dev, his philosophy is called the original Sankhya philosophy, pure Sankhya philosophy, which is a mixture of devotional service and meditation. And specifically, the Sankhya philosophy means to count, to categorize. We see in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that there are 8 separated material elements. That's there, Ashta, right? Kapil Dev expands on that, and he comes up with 24 material elements. And that's generally the default principle throughout Bhagavatam. Generally, you'll find it is 24 material elements. So the 24 material elements are as follows: earth, water, fire, air, ether or sky. 5 gross elements. Then you have 5 objects of the senses. We like to see color, form. We like to hear beautiful sounds. After arti, what will we do? Taste nice Akadashi Prasad. Taste is another one. Then there's the sense of touch, and then smell. So the 5 sense objects: sound, and color or form, smell or odor, taste, and touch sensation. So now we got 10. Now there are 10 senses, or 2 groups of 5. First is the knowledge or jnana indriyas, knowledge acquiring senses. We receive knowledge through our eyes, through our ears, through our nose, tongue, and skin. And then there are, Shri RadhaRaman Bhagavan, then there are 5 executive or working senses: the hands, the legs, and me, I know very well, the throat. Very important. Without my throat, I am not good for anything. My one astrologer told my wife, "Oh, your husband, he's one big mouth. All of his planets are in his mouth." And I said, "Yeah, he's right." He's right. So, and then, so you have the hands, the legs, the throat, genital, and anus. These are the working senses. Then we need 4 more, correct? We just did 20. Now, this 4 more is actually one seen as 4. Mind. Not this, mind. Intelligence, ego, and contaminated consciousness. Kapil Dev says actually it's 1, and they can only be differentiated into these 4 aspects. The mind accepts and rejects. The intelligence considers, or we heard, deliberates. Then there's ego. I am man. I am woman. I'm American. I'm Hindu. All kinds of designations. Everybody has an identification. But these are all temporary. They're not eternal. So they're part of the, and that leads to everyone has a certain kind of consciousness. Then Kapil Dev says there's a 25th element: time. Time is the real thing, as Arjuna learned on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Those of you who have studied Gita, Arjuna sees the Virat Rupa and he's bewildered. He's afraid. So many things he's seeing. And he asks, "Who are you? What is your mission?" And Krishna says, "Time I am. And I've come to destroy." And that is what, so time, you can say, is the representative of God in the material world. Everybody, you may be atheist, you may be theist, you may be Republican, Democrat, man, woman, this, everybody's under the control of time. Today, there were so many football games, but the clock was ticking. Finally, the game is over. You lose, you win. Time, such powerful. Bhagavatam's, actually it was in the first canto, Sutta says, time imperceptibly acts. How do we know that? One day you look in the mirror. Oh my God, I've got gray hair. Where did that come from? Time. You've seen it, I've seen it with young students I had when they were, like you all know, Rupal, right? Right? So Rupal has been my student since she was like 7, 8 years old. Now I'm teaching her daughter. Time. Just like that. Before you know it. Before you know it. So Kapil Dev says, the presence of God is there in the time element. Okay. Kapil Dev then explains to Devahooti how to become self-realized. And it's no surprise. It's the same thing Krishna says in Gita. Because as I've said now twice, now this is third, Kapil Dev is Krishna. They're the same person, different form. So, what does Krishna say in Gita? How to become self-realized? Very easy. Always think of me, become my devotee, offer your worship to me, become my friend. So, Kapila Dev basically says the same thing. Take shelter of devotees and learn how to love God, Krishna. Then, Kapil Dev gives instructions how Devahooti should meditate. And again, what's the meditation? It's a meditation on Krishna in the heart. And Kapila Dev gives a nice description of how the Lord in the heart looks. 4 hands. He's there. Kapil Dev gives very nice description. Very similar to what we find at the end of Canto 4 in the Shiva Gita, when Lord Shiva is instructing the Prachetas. And what is Lord Shiva? Yes, it's called Shiva Gita. It's his Gita. But basically, what is Lord Shiva telling the Prachetas? Not to think of him, but to think of Krishna in the heart. That's what Lord Shiva tells the Prachetas. He says, I myself do this meditation. Just like my spiritual master. He chanted Hare Krishna. He told us to chant Hare Krishna. Not that he said one thing and did another. No, he was Acharya. As he lived, we followed. That's why we accepted him, us Westerners. We didn't accept Prabhupada because he did some magic, pulled some ash out of his... No, we didn't surrender to Prabhupada for something cheap. We saw, here is the real deal. Here is somebody who's, what we say in New York, walk the walk, talk the talk. We saw what he was telling us to do, he was doing. And that's how he was able to convince the New Yorkers and the Americans by his example. Very powerful. So, Kapila Dev has his Yoga Sutras, very detailed instructions. Then, because of the various questions Devahooti has asked, Kapil Dev goes into a discussion of life in the womb. And it is so scientific. On the first month, this happens. On the second month, on the third month. It's astounding. Bhagavatam was written 5,000 years ago. It was spoken before then. So we should never think that this is some kind of hocus pocus. No, it's scientific. You read this, modern science and Bhagavatam, in this case, They're on the same page. Right on the same page. Starts off with the little thing and grows. So that's there. And so Kapil Dev explains, towards the end, Kapil Dev talks about how just try to understand the mighty strength of my Maya. We must be very respectful of Maya. As we learn in Bhagavad Gita, what does Krishna say? Duratyaya, insurmountable. On your own, independently, you're not going to cross over the waves of the modes of nature that are constantly tossing us. That's our position in the ocean of material existence. We're being tossed by the waves of ignorance or passion or goodness. So Krishna says in Gita, the only way to overcome the stringent laws of nature, surrender to me. Kapil Dev says the exact same thing in his instructions to his mother. Here's one. At the end of his instructions, Kapil Dev says many things, but I like this one for myself. Etavan eva yogena samagreneha yogina yujite bimato hi artho yat asangastu kritsnashaha. Kapil Dev says, the greatest common understanding for all yogis, because there are different types of yogis. Hatha yogis, Raja yogis, Kriya yogis, Jnana yogis. But now we have a new one, Hollyweird yogis. We have hot yogis. We have goat yogis. Beer. There are so many different kinds of yogis now. But Kapil Dev says, doesn't matter. The common understanding for all yogis is what? Complete detachment from matter. Complete detachment from material sense gratification. And the last thing Kapil Dev says, anyone who meditates upon me. So, he's saying he's God. He's saying, anyone who meditates upon me with faith and affection, who hears and chants about me, surely goes back home, back to Godhead. I finish up now because after Kapil Dev spoke so many instructions, 8 chapters, I said, right? Devahooti gets the final chapter in Canto 3. Devahooti shows how she has learned her lessons. And it's explained at the end that Devahooti also gave her body there at Gangasagara, Bay of Bengal, where the Ganges ends. It starts up in the Himalayas, right? What is that? Gangotri, right? And it ends in the Bay of Bengal. So Devahooti achieved perfection there, following the instructions of her son. But there are 2 verses that she spoke, which are so important. They're like fundamental building blocks of the science of the Hare Krishna movement. These 2, it's astounding what Devahooti says. These verses are quoted by Lord Chaitanya himself, even though they're spoken by a woman. And Lord Chaitanya was strict strict sannyasi. But he approved of, I love these verses. Yannamadeya sravananu kirtanad yat pravanad yat smaranad api kvachit shvadyopi sadya savanaya kalpate kuta punaste bhagavanu darshanat. This is what Devahooti said to Kapila. To say nothing of the spiritual advancement of persons who see the Supreme Person face to face. Even a person born in a family of dog eaters immediately becomes eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices if he or she once utters the holy name of God. If you're not convinced to chant now, I can't help you. There's nothing I can say. So let's all say, Govinda. Now you're all qualified, right? You can now do a sacrifice. But I don't know about here in the temple. But according to Devahooti, you're authorized. Oh, that's not it. If you once utter or you hear about Krishna's pastimes or offer Krishna's obeisances or even remember Krishna. See how powerful is this bhakti marg. Then the next statement right after that takes it to a whole nother level. Aho bata swapachoto gariyan yaj jivagre vartate namatubhyam tepas tapaste juhuvu sasnur arya brahmanuchur nama grinanti yete. Oh, how glorious are they whose tongues are chanting your holy name. So again, she's saying, Kapil, you are God. So anyone who chants the holy name is glorious. Therefore, it is my duty to offer you my respects. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhyayevacha patitanang pavanebhyo Vaishnav, because you all said Govinda, right? Let's say it again. There you go. Again, it says the same thing. Even if born in the family of dog eaters, such persons are worshipable, Gariyan. Persons who chant the holy name of your lordship must have executed all kinds of austerities and fire sacrifices and achieved all the good manners of the Aryans. To be chanting the holy name, they must have bathed at all the holy places, studied the Vedas, and fulfilled everything required. So, let's one more time, everybody say, Krishna. All right, I think we have some chanters. Okay. I can say, we'll do it later.
बाहर जो है कि we have a table, also somebody sitting there. अगर कोई स्पॉन्सर करना चाहता है दीयों के लिए तो प्लीज अपना नाम लिख दीजिए वहाँ पर. हरि बोल. श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय.
Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare,